Oh,
Survivor specialist Phil and Alexa are back, and congratulations to all of you Survivor fans. We're actually back with Survivor related content. You've made it. It's here. We're not just doing a top 100. We're not doing anything like that. We're actually back to talk about Survivor, not Disney, not sports, no more betting tweets that make Rick Devens lose sleep in his Georgian slumber. We are back with Survivor content.
but for those of you who are here for the Disney content, of which there can't be many, we average about 15 live listeners. We are recapping Beauty and the Beast right after this. So if you want Survivor content or Disney animated movies content, tonight is your night to be hanging out on this YouTube channel.
Yes, and it's a perfect night. Sports are over, as everybody would say. Well, the NBA, NHL, NFL, and college football are not on tonight, so it's only baseball, which in my book...
Presently over, as in this evening.
In my book, sports aren't on tonight. So this is a perfect night to just sit back, relax, talk about the greatest season of Survivor, and to talk about the greatest Disney animated movie. This is a great double shot here, everybody. You guys are having the time of your life tonight, aren't you?
This is going great. Greatest episode of Disney, or greatest. Hey, Ian Dean giving us $2. Thank you so much. Can't wait to hear about the Amanda Kimmel. We are excited to talk about her. She is quiet in this episode. She is a slow burn edit in Survivor China. Editing is much different in the Golden Age of Survivor, which honestly is what makes it so awesome.
I cannot wait to do this. So we are doing a Survivor China rewatch. This is going to work a little bit different than our Panama and Guatemala rewatches, which when we did Panama and Guatemala, we were doing 3 episodes a week. We're only going to be doing 1 episode a week because there is no Survivor on during this time. So essentially, Survivor China is going to be your new season of Survivor. If you've seen it before, watch it again week to week, rediscover it, re-fall in love with it, re-fall in love with the gorgeous, the hilarious, the most perfect human being to ever exist, Courtney Yates, re-fall in love with James Clement, fall back in love with Chicken Morris, which all of us are now out of love with because it's over. But
for one night only.
For one night only, Chicken Morris is a little bit smarter. But we're going to be talking about this every week. Probably going to stick with Wednesdays as much as we can, unless something comes up, because obviously it's not actually airing. But pretend you're actually watching in the fall of 2020. You're watching a new season of Survivor. And if you haven't watched Survivor China yet, lucky you. Lucky you getting to sit down and watch Survivor China. I will say this, there's probably going to be spoilers in here. So unfortunately for all of you, there's probably going to be some spoilers. Jay, the PC bowler man, let's not forget Todd.
How could we
never forget Todd?
Todd has a great premiere episode. Todd is the sneaky guy who pushes all the attention off of him twice. Todd is fantastic, but Phil is right. There will be spoilers. Our one night only comment about Chicken had absolutely nothing to do with where his placement is in Survivor China.
Well, hey, episode 1's over. This is the episode 1 recap.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Philip Conti in our patron group asked if we were going to watch live and then recap, which maybe for the finale would actually be kind of fun. I know we don't usually stream ourselves watching because it's probably not super exciting, but also esports is a really big thing. And I feel like we could get there. So could be a good idea for the future, but this is an awesome premiere, and China is such a great season for a multitude of reasons, but also just because of the location, and location is not something we talk about anymore. And the entire first, let's say 10 minutes of this episode is really, really focused on China.
Yeah, and so this is a full page of notes here, guys, of Survivor China episode 1, which I've watched this season about 6 times. But I do find it very interesting that they actually do decide to start the season, and thank you, Crypto Daddy, for the $5 and no comment. We love this. This is fine, everybody. You can send us $5, but no comment. We're all about that.
Yeah, say nothing, but Crypto Daddy might be the best YouTube comment.
It says all there needs to be said. But I thought it was interesting how they start off in Beijing. And for anybody who, and I could be wrong on this because I'm also not the most well-versed in like history and all of that important stuff. I mean, history is not that important, right? I mean, who cares? Sure. But I'm pretty sure that this was one of the first years in a long time when they actually had the approval for American citizens to go and do this type of thing in China. And I could be wrong on that, but I think that's why they wanted to show the city, because it was kind of CBS and Survivor giving a little bit of the middle finger to a lot of other reality shows and being like, look what we just did, guys. We just shot in China. And I think, do they start in Beijing or something like that? But I think it was really kind of a little bit of a middle finger here.
Well, the beginning feels like the beginning of an Amazing Race episode. They start in, I assume it's Beijing, but it could be
Shanghai. Yeah.
It feels like there's a mega truck driving.
Oh, you're okay. Can you hear my fan? Can people in the comments, can you hear my fan? It is right here. I don't know if people can hear it.
No one can hear it, but your wind is blowing. The hair is blowing beautifully. It
looks great, right? Yeah.
Well, now it's a motorcycle party.
It's fine.
So anyways, but it feels like the beginning of an Amazing Race episode because they start in the city, and I really don't know. I can't think of another season off the top of my head when they start like that. And then they put them in the truck, and then they go straight to the, I believe it's a temple. Mm-hmm. And this is where the casting is just perfect, where you have, I don't know exactly what Leslie does. I believe she leads a worship group. She's not having it. She's not liking what's going on there.
What I love so much about this, and good, nobody can hear the fan. What I love so much about this is that her bottom thing is Christian radio host. And then she starts talking about how she's not very religious.
Right.
And I don't
with Jesus Christ.
Yes. And I don't know. I don't look, I don't hang out with very many religious people. I really don't. But I don't know how many people would go and work as a Christian radio host or as a Christian anything. When the first word in your title is Christian, I doubt that you're probably not very religious. I mean, that's just my take. And maybe I'm wrong. But when I'm hey, I'm a sports betting writer. I'm not well, I don't really like sports. It's just not really how that works. You have to have an interest in that kind of thing. It's not like you're a marketing executive or, in the case of Dave Cruiser, a model / what I wrote down what he is, but he's a model / actor or something like that.
Baseball / dating coach.
It's so funny. So when I look at her, I'm like, oh, Leslie, you're probably a little religious. And this is phenomenal casting right away. We get the two opposites right off the bat, which is Courtney walking in and rolling her eyes immediately because she thinks
made up eyes. That eyeliner, I would love to see the B-roll of her eyeliner at some point just getting rained on. That's a lot.
It's amazing. And she's rolling her eyes because she thinks it's so stupid and so pathetic and so dumb. And then we have Leslie, who is saying that it felt like she was worshiping. And so we have the person who, I'm not saying Leslie disrespects it because that would be incorrect, but it definitely affects her.
With it.
Yeah, it affects her in a way. And Jeff even says this is not a religious thing. This is a ceremony. It's a welcome ceremony, all of that. So he's trying to make it seem like, hey, this is what it is. But she does leave this welcome ceremony, and it could be seen as a sign of disrespect, even if I don't necessarily think it is. But then you have the opposite sign of disrespect, which is Courtney just being so annoyed that she has to bow, so annoyed that her hands must be up at all times, so annoyed that this just exists.
I love that the guy's those are too low. You gotta prop them back up. I didn't know that. I mean, as someone who did go to church her entire life, I didn't know that there was an appropriate length or I guess height for your hands. But Courtney is not having it. This eye rolls. The guy, I don't know who's eye rolling more, Courtney or the man who's trying desperately to help her. And then on the complete flip side, we have PG, who has the utmost respect for this because this is her culture. So I think, the casting in this season is absolutely perfect. And some of these careers are just something else. And this is still the point in Survivor where they're like, this is Phil Wood, a professional podcaster. And this is Alexa. She's a gay Mormon flight attendant because you have to clarify that they're gay at this point in life. So it's really the lunch lady, the Christian radio host, the New York City waitress, and the grave digger, the man who buries people. It gets Miss Montana. It's just these are some of the best careers that we've had in Survivor.
And let's literally do this. Let's go through each of these because I do find this fascinating. And it was, so I figured out Dave's, it is a bartender informer model. And I don't think Yeah, and I don't think anything has ever summed up a character on Survivor better than that. Because Dave is one of the most annoying characters on this season. And so for them to be like, he's a bartender and former model, and like the way he talks to people and how he thinks he's so handsome, but the body has kind of turned a little, it's lost its muscular edge, let's say. I love that. And then you have
a salt and pepper thing going on, though.
Oh, he's got a great hairline and a great face. I'm just saying he probably isn't an underwear model when this season is going off. Let's just put it that way. But we have him. We have Frosty, who at the time was the youngest player to ever play at 20 years old. I thought that was interesting.
I know, 20.
And he is Steve Carell's biggest dream, parkour. That's what he does. We have Eric, who was like a Nashville musician. Jamie, who is a South Carolina student. Chicken, who was a chicken farmer, which, by the way, anybody in the chat know what Chicken's real name is. It's always fun. If you guys know it without looking it up, it's always one of my favorites because they don't even ever tell you that on the show. You have PG, who's a jeweler. And you have Ashley, who's the WWE superstar.
Yes.
Which is amazing. That is phenomenal casting.
Her boots are to die for.
The giant boots are so good. And then who am I missing? I feel like I'm missing one of the females.
John Robert, the poker player.
Oh, I was trying to go through the tribe first. I was trying to go through
that tribe.
Sharia. What is Sharia? Sharia is like a first grade teacher?
I am not sure.
She's an elementary school teacher of some sort.
And Jamie, what is Jamie?
She's just a South Carolina student.
South Carolina. I believe she was an honor student, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So all of that is just to say, just that one tribe. It's not. Survivor fell into an issue in the 20s where it started to be a lot of bartenders, models, whatever. That tribe, and I'm not saying this in a bad way because a lot of them are very good-looking people, but would be considered an unattractive tribe by today's standards. But it still has the former model who ends up being the best TV of any of the models probably to ever play the game of Survivor. If you really think about it.
It's a good-looking season for what it's worth.
But it's not like Philippines good looking. It's not everybody walking around like Pete Yurkowski, like, look at me, here I am. I mean, other than James, of course. But
Cherie was an elementary school teacher. You're right.
Okay. So what I'm trying to say, though, is I feel like that Jean Hu tribe, despite being the less memorable tribe from this season, has such interesting people on it and such interesting personalities because of what their careers were and all of that. And it all comes out right away. Mm-hmm. I mean, we actually see at the beginning, Dave and Ashley sticking up for each other. And we know what happens literally 3 days later, and they're out there sticking up for each other. And Dave is telling her how everything's going to be okay. Everything is whatever. And you're just like, wow, like that is like, there's so many layers to the characters, and we're talking about the less interesting tribe, and we haven't even gone over to the tribe that ends up, in my opinion, being the greatest tribe in the history of Survivor in terms of character-wise. It's just really, really fascinating.
Right, and that's the thing. This Jean Hu tribe, they don't have the final. They're not the final four, so they're quote unquote not as important in this season. But like you just said, there's probably more interesting than like half the tribes that Survivor's ever produced.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so then you go over to the other tribe, which obviously Fei Long, iconic tribe. You have Courtney, the New York waitress, Leslie, the Christian radio host, James, the gravedigger. You have Jean Robert, the professional poker player, Todd Herzog, the gay Mormon flight attendant.
He's gay.
Gay. By the way, part of his job is gay.
Actually, to be the flight attendant, he has to be gay.
And he has to be Mormon. He's not just a flight attendant. The actual ad for him was gay Mormon flight attendant. And
I apply to both of these.
I am perfect for this. And then at the bottom, whatever airline he was working for had the equality thing that was like, we do not discriminate by race, creed, religion, or sex. And it's like, but we need a gay Mormon flight attendant.
But also, are you down with airplanes? Because that's the third part of the job.
Because honestly, we need the gay Mormon. Correct. We need the gay Mormon. Love how things have changed. Just since 2008.
Could you imagine if they were like, what did they have for like Aurora's career? Like, could you imagine last year they're like the gay person? Like that just would not.
Yeah.
Why?
Why wasn't Richard Hatch the gay business guy? And then we have Amanda Kimmel, Miss Montana. We have Aaron Reisberger, Jack Johnson lookalike. And we have, which I think he's actually a surfing instructor, which is really funny because they literally got at the height of Jack Johnson's career, or at least it felt like in my teenage days, the height of Jack Johnson's career. Aaron Reisberger is on TV looking like Jack Johnson and being a surfing instructor. And then we have as the final one, am I missing a woman again? Who did I leave off? Courtney, Amanda. And we have Lashley.
With a haircut that is just unrivaled.
It's one of those things. So I'm watching this season, watching it with my girlfriend. She's never seen it. And it's funny because we go from season 7 and we're watching Pearl Islands right now. We just watched Rhino get voted off. She's not happy. But we watched this one, and that was the first thing she said. And what I actually think is funny is that the further we move around away from the 80s, the worse the hairdos on Survivor get. I mean, what is that hair?
Eventually you guys get to Samoa.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. You get the Shambo Rambo going on, and you're like, what is happening here? But yeah, Denise, the lunch lady, and like you were saying with PG, how she was very emotional. I like how everybody's saying Reisberger isn't right. It's Reisberger, whatever. It's spelled. It could be Rice or Reese. I don't know. It's German. It's spelled the Rice way of German, but maybe I'm wrong. But either way, that doesn't matter. You were talking about PG and how she was very emotional because this is her culture. If her grandfather could see this, all of that. And what's funny is you also have Denise, the lunch lady, who has really no culture. And she admits that throughout the season that she's not a very cultured person, also being so unbelievably emotional just because of what she's witnessing. So I love the Leslie versus Courtney dynamic and the PG versus Denise dynamic that they have going on at the beginning of this season.
Absolutely. And the PG and Denise, that lasts for a really long time. And that obviously doesn't immediately contrast at the beginning, but as we get closer to the end, no spoilers, that becomes, a way bigger conversation.
Absolutely. So also like that we see survivors on a train. I think this is the only season we see survivors on a train. That. Poor Eric has to sit across from Jean Robert, which there's something about Jean Robert just because of how the way this season goes on that I assume he must smell bad or something just because of how they talk about him as the season goes on. So for some reason I found myself feeling bad for Eric that he had to sort of share a train car with Jean Robert. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jean Robert's got a couple problems this season, and it sounds like his smell is not one of the larger ones.
Yes. No, his gut is a little bit, and that's not like a fat shame, but it's funny to see a survivor male in their 30s. I'm assuming he was in his 30s at the time with a gut, because normally if you're being cast as a younger player, and I know Jean Robert was not meant to be out there to be the good looking guy, but they don't normally cast guys who are out of shape unless they're Chicken Morris or Big Tom.
Right. Exactly. And poker players, you've had Ronnie, who's really good looking. You've had Anna, who's really good looking. So out of the Garrett
Edelstein, yeah.
So actually, out of all the poker players they've casted, of which I think there are only 4, I think we just named 4 of them. There might be a 5th one. But they're all extremely good looking. Yeah. So Jean Robert was I believe he was the first. So he kind of ushered in the tough road that poker players have had him on Survivor. But that is really interesting.
Yeah. And something I will say this about Jean Robert now, before we start getting to some of his less appealing moments. I actually think that Jean Robert is a phenomenal TV character. And again, it's looking at it in the context of the era. In 2008, what he was doing was so fun to watch because he's a dunce. He's an idiot. And that's what we watch. And nowadays, I think people would get a little bit more offended by him because of the comments about Courtney, the comments about Amanda, the comments about Todd. He makes bad comments about everybody. But in this edit, and again, maybe Survivor just needs to do what HBO has suddenly been doing, which is in historical context, this is why it's okay that they said what they did. And it's or you could just hope that your audience knows historical context. But Jean Robert in 2008, it was phenomenal to watch him because the whole time he's going to lose and he thinks he's so much smarter than he is. And every single person on that island, including Jamie's toe, is smarter than Jean Robert.
Yeah. And I actually don't remember a lot of his comments towards these players. So this is going to be kind of a brand new walk down memory lane for me.
Well, I hope you enjoy it.
I don't know if I will, but I'm here for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, he says some weird things. He says some not great things. There's a scene with him and James that comes up where they're in the water, and it's definitely not great. But I love that Jean Robert ends up getting the way Jean Robert's arc goes is absolutely amazing. All right, so we get out of there. They're done with that, and we go over and we meet Fei Long. One thing that I want to bring up though before we actually get to the beach, Jeff gives them the greatest work ever written on strategy, The Art of War.
The Art of War, I know.
And what I find to be
a Spark Notes version?
But what I find to be so funny about this, and tell me if you agree, is that fast forward 24 seasons, and now the greatest book ever written on strategy is the fact that they have Boston Rob and Sandra on the island. So they literally went from like, you guys are going to have to read in order to understand the game to we just want to have a reason to have two of the biggest fan favorites on there. Is that okay?
Right. And they're going to give you advice that absolutely does not apply to either of their winning seasons.
I love it.
None of their 3 combined winning seasons.
Yeah. It's insane. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. All right, we get to the beaches.
Yeah, so we get to the beaches or like landing areas. And for what it's worth, Jean Robert, he's very astute. One of the first conversations we see is that he calls Todd out for being sneaky, which is correct. And Todd knows it's correct. And Jean Robert knows it's correct. But Todd sneaks his way out of it, which is huge. And this is one of 2 times that Todd does a really, really great job of getting the spotlight off of him. And there wasn't even a spotlight on him at this point. It was only Jean Robert who's talking to him one-on-one.
Yeah, I love it because this shows how good of a player Todd is. And so I ended up having Todd as my number 2 player of all time when we did our Survivor Top 100. And a lot of people, I think, just forget about how good Todd is at Survivor. And he is a phenomenal Survivor player. And we see it right off the bat because Jean Robert walks up to him and says, I think you're lying. Todd could have easily just been like, all right, you big buffoon, get the hell out of my face. But instead of doing that, he says, hey, can you just please not tell people that? I'm not going to tell you I'm sharp or not sharp or whatever, but can you please just not walk around telling people that? And he could have gotten really angry, and Jean Robert could have went back and said, guys, this Todd guy is not who he says he is. But because of the way Todd reacted, Jean Robert, in his sick, weird head, actually felt that Todd had built some sort of relationship with him there.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had built some sort of kinship by him calling out Todd and Todd not screaming at him that he was an idiot. It's so amazing how he does that.
And I think Todd having a really level-headed reaction to that, which I don't think a lot of people would. I think Todd having that kind of reaction makes Jean Robert feel like, oh, well, I'm in control. Mm-hmm. I knocked him off his heels a little bit, but now he needs me, and it's perfect. And it's really impressive. And Jean Robert ends up trusting him after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's untrustworthy. It's amazing.
It's so crazy just because of how Todd reacts. Mm-hmm. Just because of how Todd reacts. And yeah, it's something that easily could have been just, oh man, like it ruins your game. And Todd doesn't do it. And Todd has another moment later in the episode, we might as well just talk about it now, where he puts all the pressure on Aaron to be the leader. Right. And he calls it out in front of everybody, the entire tribe, in a way that Aaron can't turn it down. But also Todd's like, no, you just be really good at it. It's like, whatever. He makes it seem so harmless the way he's throwing it out there. Like there's nothing, underlying there at all. When in reality, Todd's like, now Aaron is screwed. He's got no shot in hell now. And it's brilliant.
And it's perfect because Aaron, throughout this episode, he's like, I could be the leader, but I don't need to. Like, that's not really who I am. And Todd can just sense that without Aaron even having that conversation. And again, pushes any pressure. Not that anyone, and I think Todd would say this himself, I don't think anybody would have put Todd in that situation anyway to be the leader, but knew who to push it to. He knew to push it to Aaron and not to push it to Jean Robert or to James, who's crushing it and just like building their entire camp. But I think he knows that James's personality is not that, but Aaron's is.
Yeah, and I think that's what Todd's greatest strength is playing and leaning into other people's personalities and their egos. And Amanda and Courtney don't really have egos, and that's why he worked so well with Amanda and Courtney. But when it came to Jean Robert, his ego's so big. All right, let him do what he's got to do. He wants to think he's in control. Let him be in control. When it came to Aaron, he knew that Aaron didn't want to be the leader, but he also knew that people would look to someone as Aaron, like Aaron, as their leader. Mm-hmm. And we don't see this moment happen, but I guarantee when they're all talking about what's your career, what's your job, and he says surfing instructor, Todd goes, bingo, that's my guy, because he's a teacher. He tells people how to do stuff. I'm going to make him the leader. James is a gravedigger. James says he doesn't like to be around people, that he likes to just work on his own and do whatever he can do and be away from people and just work with his hands and just get it done. He likes that. So it's really brilliant what Todd does in this moment. And it's just another one of the million things that you're going to talk about throughout this season of an underrated Todd move.
And all James does, I mean, I think we hear about 5 words from James this episode. He buries people.
He buries people.
He's not a gravedigger. He buries people. That's
the best thing. When he says, Leslie's like, oh, you seem like an interesting guy. What do you do? I think my internet's cracking up, but
yeah, you're better now.
I'm better now. Yeah, it was weird. But he says like, what do you do? You seem like an interesting guy. Oh, I bury people. And then she's just like, oh, bury people. That's interesting. And it's like, you should be
a Christian radio host.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, that's cool. Are you like an undertaker? Like, do you want to like not come near me? No, I think it's just so funny. I mean, he's so. What's interesting is every time I go to watch this season again, I expect myself to like Amanda more than I do in this season. I love her in Fans versus Favorites, but in this season, she doesn't really do it for me. But I always expect to like Amanda more than I do and like James less than I do. And every time I watch that first episode, I'm like, nope, James is just as good as advertised.
Amanda's like not in this episode.
No, she's really not. She calls like Todd cute or calls him adorable or something. And that's essentially all we really get from her.
Yes, you're right.
But James, like, again, watching with my girlfriend, she's like, I love him. He's my favorite. And it's amazing how she doesn't know anything about she doesn't recognize any of them because she's never watched 16. She's never watched 20. And she only watched 40, which Todd isn't on. So she's never seen any of them. And her immediate reaction is, I love James.
I know.
We watched 1 episode. We didn't watch any more. And this was just after he says the buries people and then pushes down the bamboo tree.
He pushes down a straight up tree.
And she's like, that's my favorite.
Right. And actually, this will be fun to kind of follow along. But I think people love a fish out of water story. Mm-hmm. And James is such a fish out of water when, I mean, he's out of Louisiana, let alone he's like interacting with living humans instead of dead humans. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just so appealing. He's also can knock over a tree with his bare hands. So yeah. James is he's such a unique character.
Yeah, it's so amazing what James is able to do on this season and how he's able to open up and kind of just be himself the entire time. He never tries to be anything but himself. And I think that's what works so well about this cast in general. Mm-hmm. Is that none of them try to be anything other than who they are. James is just the quiet James. He's not trying to play a TV character. Todd is a huge fan. All of that. All these characters. Courtney's just playing a bitch. She's just doing it. Like, they're all.
I don't think she's even playing. I think she's. She says something great. I don't know if it's her or someone else, but she says, someone says we're going to see a flight of attendants and positivity.
That's what she said. She said, I got dropped off in a land of flight attendants and Sunday school teachers.
Yes, Sunday school teachers. And she's like, we don't have those in New York. I'm like, yes, Courtney, that's so good.
And it's so true though. But again, not playing it, but they're all just themselves. PG is. And I've met PG a lot. I did the PG game on her Twitch channel. I did a game with her. And the thing with PG is she is a leader. Like, she is somebody who wants to be in the power position. Mm-hmm. But, and I'm not saying that this is how she is in real life, but I do think coming into this season, there's a thought in her head of Asian women on Survivor are not the leaders of their tribes. Mm-hmm. So how can I overcome that? and still manage to be who I am. And what I find so fascinating and likable about PG's character, which the first time we watch it, nobody really likes PG. Everybody finds her kind of annoying. But then as you watch it again and again and again, you start to respect what she's doing. PG manages to go out onto the show as I'm trying to think of what the word is, but as a person who normally the person that PG is, an Asian female, does not go anywhere on this show. They're always voted out early, at least up until this point. We had seen Becky go all the way to the end, but she didn't do anything. It was all Yul carrying her there. And so we see this happen, and she manages to be exactly who PG is the entire season and get as far as she did. And I think that just speaks volumes to how good of a player of Survivor PG is, because she was able to adapt but never shut off who PG is. And we see that in this first episode at Tribal Council, or even before Tribal Council, when she's trying to talk to Chicken and Chicken won't talk to her and Chicken is pissing her off and all this stuff. And it's like, I'm asking your opinion. Give it to me. Like, whatever. And then at the Tribal Council, she says, I want to be the leader. I'll be the leader. And then they all say, oh, well, it's going to be Dave. And she's still like, yes, we made this decision. It's one of those little kind of annoying things, but it's just who PG is. And she's still doing it in a way that is under the radar enough that she should have been the first boot on the season. 100%. She should have been the first boot on the season. And if I'm not mistaken, she's the last freaking standing John Who.
Yeah. And that's what's so great, because people, I mean, you watch it and Chicken is obviously being who he is, but she's giving it back to him and she's fighting him, and no one else is really doing that. And I think to your point, Phil, and a point that so many people make, if an Asian American woman makes a comment like that, usually they go home. So it's refreshing to watch this from 2000 and God knows what year, but it's refreshing that she stands up for herself. And this is something that we'll continually see throughout the season. She knows what she wants and she knows what she believes in. And I think that's what's so appealing about her as a player. She doesn't let up. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. PG is something to watch, and it's fun to watch that tribe, the John Who train wreck tribe, how they start to develop and how all of them kind of just start to into their own personalities and everything. I mean, it's really, really fascinating. And you know, we all hate her because of what happens later in the season, but at the same time, it's the greatest challenge throw in the history of the show.
She nails it.
And we'll talk about that in a couple weeks, but it's the greatest challenge throw in the history of the show. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about John Who, because we talked a lot about Fei Long. I think we covered pretty much everything in Fei Long. I always find it interesting how Leslie is such a big character early on in the show, even though she doesn't, she's barely really a part of it. I always find it funny how she's such a big character. But we go to John Who. And what I find interesting about this, when you look at these two tribes, what the hell was production thinking when they said, all right, James and Aaron are on this tribe, and I don't know, Eric and Frosty are the equivalents of James and Aaron? What was production thinking when they made these tribes?
Nimble.
Okay.
But he's not a gravedigger.
Yeah, he's nimble, but that doesn't mean he can carry, like, however heavy that thing was and lead his tribe, where James is literally just doing a day at the gym.
Yeah, and we see that in the challenge. I mean, Frosty does try to hold his own, but when the whole challenge is to hold something above your head and use shoulder muscles, I think James is the person who would benefit the most from a challenge like that.
Absolutely. And then they have Aaron and Jean Robert. They literally have James at the front, who's 6'4" or whatever of all muscle. Aaron in the middle, who's 6'4" of all muscle, and Jean Robert at the back, who's 6'4" of all muscle. The other tribe doesn't have a single person who looks like they're over 6 feet tall.
Right. Like Dave looks built, but he's not James.
Dave is over the hill. Dave is past his prime. James and Aaron are in the middle of their prime, and Jean Robert, and we can knock him all we want for being overweight or whatever he is, and like just.
I'm sure he could still carry more than either of us.
I mean, if we were in a wrestling match, Jean Robert beat the living crap out of me.
Yeah.
It's so unbalanced, and I don't know what the purpose was, because even when you're like, oh, well, they do have the weaker women. They do have Leslie, who really doesn't do much. They do have Courtney, who is by far the weakest, probably Survivor player in the history of the show. But like the other side has, like, they have Ashley, they have Sharia, who ends up being incredibly strong, as we'll see. But they have PG, who she's not exactly Miss Muscles. You know, she's good at puzzles, but she's not exactly. And Jamie doesn't really do it. So, like, it's not even like you're sitting here going, well, you know, and I hate to be like the guy who's like, oh, well, they essentially got a man in one of the women because she was so strong. But it's not like you're looking at this and saying to yourself, you know what, they got the greatest female challenge competitor of all time, and that's what really evened it out. It's just the tribes are so uneven.
Right. The tribes are really uneven. Because I think it's really just you have James and you don't have anyone even remotely equivalent. That alone is unfair.
Well, and I was trying to figure out when I was looking at it, because if I'm casting this season and I say to myself, okay, these are our 16 survivors, and it's like, all right, now break them into 2 tribes. Here's the first thing I'm doing. PG and Courtney, you're going opposite. James and Aaron, you're going opposite. It's the first thing I'm doing. How do James and Aaron end up on the same tribe in this season?
I don't know.
I don't get it. I don't get, because like the whole like Todd versus Frosty. Okay, Frosty's going to be stronger there, but they're like same height, same stature. Okay, so Frosty's going to be a little bit stronger. Get it. Whatever. But James is going to be stronger than anybody. So give the tribe that gets Todd, Jean Robert, and James, but don't give them Jean Robert, James, and Aaron. Poor Eric can't beat Jean Robert, James, or Aaron in anything.
And we'll see this in a few episodes, but we now understand, like, it makes perfect sense why why the other tribe ends up stealing or trading for James and Aaron. It's abundantly clear, and this is like one of the best tribes ever assembled, but it also helps because none of them went home.
None of them went home. And that's the thing. We get to know this Fei Long tribe so well that you're like, all right, this is great. And what works for Survivor in this season, and I always say this, that editors' dreams are why a lot of people end up being ranked high in Survivor rankings. Like we just did our top 100. Coach is high because he's an editor's dream. Spencer Bledsoe was an editor's dream in season 28. It doesn't mean he's a great Survivor player. He's just an editor's dream because he's the underdog on a tribe that has no business voting out who they're voting out. But what was beautiful for the John Hu tribe and the editors is that Ashley and Dave cause all the drama at the beginning, and it just works. Ashley, Dave, and Chicken causing all the drama they cause was perfect, because while we're getting to know and love Fei Long and we're starting to understand PG's dilemma and her frustration, we're also watching 3 people that were just like, oh my God, this is TV. This is insane. And it works, but there's no way that these tribes should have been ever set up this way.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Ryan Chan, and I think this is just a really interesting comment. He says, PG talks a lot about how unbalanced the teams were. Apparently, production told her that Fei Long had both the weakest and the strongest, while Jean Hu had all the average competitors, which, looking at it, I mean, as you just said, Phil, like Ashley, WWE wrestler, solid. Dave, solid. Courtney, not good. James, very good. So if that is how they broke it out, then they did it right. But I think it's kind of like the haves versus have-nots. Like, look how that worked out for you.
But here's the problem with it. In the game of Survivor, if one tribe gets the advantage, they sit out their weakest members. Mm-hmm. So Fei Long has the strongest and the weakest. Once they get a one-person advantage, now they're 2 weakest tribe members, Todd and Courtney, and I'm not sure how it actually goes, but they don't have to participate. So now the whole average versus great and bad is completely out the window, because the average are only competing against the great because all the weak are sitting out. Yeah,
you're completely right.
Yeah.
And I don't really, I mean, we obviously have a lot of imbalanced tribes after this, but now that since we're really analyzing it, it is extremely unfair.
I do wonder, though. I mean, this was the era of Survivor kind of doing these kinds of things. I do wonder if in this season they did it purposely, following up the haves versus have-nots, and decided like, oh, now we're gonna do a Amanda and James thing like this. Like I wondered if they decided and just didn't announce it this time, because if you really think about it, season 12, old, young, old women, young women, old men, young men. Season 13 by race. Season 14 haves versus have-nots. Season 15. The strongest and the weakest versus the average. It doesn't really fit into the storyline, but it makes sense with what Survivor was doing that they would have done it that way to test it out and see if it worked.
Yeah, there is a lot of imbalance in kind of like the golden age of Survivor. It is interesting.
Yeah, a lot of imbalance. Yeah, a lot.
Even in token chains too. It's not like divided that way, but it is a little imbalanced. It's interesting.
Token Chains is a little bit imbalanced, but Token Chains also has the fact of Joe Dowdle getting injured, I think hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I know he doesn't really get medevac till later, but he gets hurt earlier on, I think.
Right.
And maybe I'm forgetting that, but I think that definitely hurt them.
So surprised to no one, Fei Long wins immunity.
Yeah, surprise to no one. Fei Long wins immunity. It's a pretty cool challenge. I always love these older challenges. They're so much better. And
it's their tribe, icons, like the fighting tiger and the flying dragon. Love that.
I love it. It's great. And I love that they do that. And I wish they would do that more nowadays. But you know, they're so obsessed with doing a puzzle at the end, and this challenge ends with a puzzle, but it's a different puzzle, you know, and it's something where like everybody has to participate, not just like the beginning was a waste. I love James taking on Frosty in the parkour thing. James is amazing. I love how Frosty misses the thing. And then, I mean, they come back. I mean, Frosty does a really good job, but he's not 6'4" of unbelievable chiseled marble. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, Frosty can hold his own, but anyone against James is just not gonna hang.
Not gonna hang. So they win. Jean Hu goes to tribal, and I'm always fascinated that Chicken is the first boot here. The more I watch the show, the less I like Chicken. And I don't know how other people. I don't know how you feel about that, Alexa.
I think he's got a great meme, and that's about all I got going.
Because when I watched it the first time, I really liked him. I was like, "Oh man, I hope he stays. I hope he stays. Like that'd be great."
I don't love the bossy shelter guy that doesn't usually do it.
I'm more talking about like, again, like the fish out of water, like you had talked about earlier. Like,
that's
out of his element. He's not used to talking to people. Like this isn't his thing. And so at the beginning, he's bossy. He's kind of annoying, and you know they don't like that. And then he's not giving any advice, and they're trying to get him to give advice. But then he kind of turns it around. But the thing is, I always find him to just be so condescending. Like, I just feel like he's so condescending the entire time. So I like him less and less every time I watch it, even though I think, like, at the time, people kind of liked him. It's like, you know, the fish out of water or whatever. I still can't believe they vote him out first, though. Ashley is sick, throwing up.
Yeah, she's vomiting.
PG wasn't very useful in that challenge. Doesn't seem like she's going to be all that useful. And Chicken really is like one of the stronger members of the tribe in an era of Survivor where you kept around your stronger members, and they don't really pitch it to us, the editors. They don't telegraph that Chicken's going to go home. So I'm always surprised he goes home in this episode.
I think because we're also in the same era of Survivor where people vote people out who they just don't connect to or they honestly just don't like, which is I think why it was kind of waffling between PG and Chicken, because PG was rubbing some people the wrong way and Chicken was just doing a worse job of it. But you're right, because you don't always see that where it's like, okay, do we get the stronger person or the person who we're annoyed with? But it turns out the strong person is also who we're annoyed with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the dam is great. Great.
Oh, the dam is
one of the best screams like after a vote out.
It's the best exit other than Greg Buis is crying. It's amazing, his scream, all that. But I'm always sitting there and again, it's kind of funny how Dave stands up for Ashley in this episode. Like if we were doing this podcast live, we would say, wow, Dave and Ashley are going to work together and that's going to be it. And it falls apart in a week. I mean, but Dave could have voted out Ashley here and he doesn't do it. And they vote for PG and there's votes for Chicken and there's votes for Ashley. And it always blows my mind that Chicken goes home. And I always would like, this is an episode where I would love to see an extra half hour of Jean Hu. What was really going on over there that made it so that PG was safe, Chicken wasn't, and Ashley's name pretty much came off the block? Like,
right. We didn't really get into that.
What is it that PG does that's so good that she's able to save herself? I don't understand, and I wish I just understood it a little bit better, because it's an expert Survivor move and gameplay by whatever PG does, but what is she doing that is making it so that she doesn't go home first here when nobody was really on her side?
Right. And same with Ashley too, who was sick, and people, you always vote out the sick person. So I would have liked to see some uncut footage of that.
I agree. I completely agree.
Great first boot. We have a fantastic first boot of the season.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, this is one of those seasons where the only player that I always find to be so meh is Eric. He's the only one who I'm like, whatever. But every other character on this season is phenomenal. No matter what place they get, their character or their gameplay or whatever brings so much to the table. Right. And that's why China's always my favorite season. It's the best cast ever assembled.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It is.
And I forget what the preview is like. I think it's a little more Ashley and Dave drama.
I don't think I watched the preview, honestly. I think I actually did turn it off.
Yeah.
I've seen it 90 times. I don't think I need, the previews, but I didn't even think like we should talk about what the preview
are. So MVP, I think you give that to, I mean, in like present day Survivor, I feel like we'd give it to Todd or possibly PG.
Yeah, I think we would probably give it to, I don't know.
Probably Todd, because his PG, like, yes, she saved herself, but also like put herself in a position where she could have gone home. Todd nailed it.
Todd's gameplay is so expert in this, and him talking with Amanda, and you see that he's already setting himself up. Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so. But yeah, I think it would probably be Todd. Although PG, because PG, we don't really understand what she does to save herself.
Right, that's true.
Does Jamie get a confessional in this episode?
Eric does not. I know that.
Okay.
So it's kind of cute how they work together but don't talk. It's really cute.
Spoilers, everybody. Jamie and Eric are married.
Present day, yeah.
Yeah, they're still married. So if you
really cool.
Yeah.
Anything else we're missing from this first episode?
I don't think so. I think we covered pretty much everything. Let's see.
But yeah, so we're gonna keep these going every Wednesday. We're gonna try to, recreate your guys' Survivor night. In the past we've done rewatches and we've recapped 3 episodes at a time, but this season is so good where it's so worth overanalyzing. And also we have an entire year's worth of content to make up. So just keep tuning in every Wednesday. We're going to keep these going with the Survivor China rewatches. And as we mentioned at the beginning, we're keeping our Disney animated movie rewatches going on too. So after this, we're going to recap Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast. That's what we're watching. We're going to recap it probably within the next 15 minutes. So everybody tune into that. We'll be back next Wednesday night with episode 2. I don't know what the name of it is. I always like that this one's called The Chicken's a Little Bit Smarter.
Oh, I like that.
Nobody says it. And it's definitely a play on the fact that Chicken is a guy's name, which they were hoping he'd be the next iteration of Big Tom, and he isn't. But a chicken's a little bit smarter.
They definitely did try that. They kind of gave him the same hat.
Everything. Also, that hat is so unfair because when it's pouring on everybody, he's not even getting wet.
Yeah, that's unfair. But anyways, he ends up going home first, so that sucks.
That sucks. Chicken for an all first boots. Everybody from this season, whatever boot they go home, they should be on an all blank boots season.
Honestly, yeah, they should.
Yep.
Can't wait to see Chicken and Reem go at it. That's what we all need.
That would be amazing TV, and I don't think that two people could be more opposite in their delivery of things and more same in their personalities.
Exactly.
Yeah. Stubborn. But all right, so we'll be back next week. If you are a Disney fan, and we encourage you all to be Disney fans, make sure to tune in 5-10 minutes for the next one, and also share this one with everybody. Let them know that the Survivor specialists are actually watching Survivor again, so that people will come back and not be scared of us, because we need our friends. Yes, we need our friends. And keep tuning in. Again, we're going to keep this going for a while. So if you guys also have any suggestions, give us a shout. And we're at 105 patrons, which is super exciting. We've been kind of maintaining that for a little while. So if you want to become a patron, for our $10 patrons, we're going to be casting a Heroes versus Villains season, but with
Disney characters, and that's going to be a ton of fun. We're probably going to do that sometime.
Very on brand.
Very on brand. We want to keep the Disney Survivor merger thing going. So tune in. You guys know where to find us on social media. Tell your friends, tell your parents, tell your siblings, and we'll be back in 5 minutes with our recap of Beauty and the Beast.
Bye.